Mr. Bowen, you can be seated at the witness table. Good afternoon and welcome to you. I know members have really missed being together, but we're going to begin our second panel. I want to introduce Mr. Mike Bowen. Mr. Bowen is the Executive Vice President of Prestige Ameritech, which is America's largest domestic surgical mask maker. I want to thank you, Mr. Bowen, for flying from Texas to be with us today. Your story is a very powerful one. And to my colleagues, Mr. Bowen has been, I think really, he wins an award for tenacity, because over 3 presidential administrations, he's been banging on the door, warning, asking for, pointing out that America has a dangerous dependence on foreign countries for products that we need here at home. So this is very important testimony, and we welcome you. We thank you for traveling to be with us today with all the extenuating circumstances to travel, and we're very grateful to you. So you are now recognized for your statement, and then we will, and then you will hear from the members, and I'm sure both your statement will provoke questions, and that you'll get good ones from both sides of the aisle. I should add something here, and that is this issue of our terrible dependence on foreign countries for not only our drugs, our nation's critical drug supply, but also all of the materials that we've been talking about, is an issue that's been, is shared. The concern is shared on both sides of the aisle. As I said previously today, I think it was this morning and not this afternoon, that we've had bipartisan legislation on it. But we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. I think it's a very important one, and I know the members will as well. I want to invite, at this point, the ranking member to welcome our guest, because he is his constituent. So, to Dr. Burgess.
Always good to welcome a Texan to our committee. It's always a good day. We have a Texan at the witness stand. We know we're going to hear. We know we're going to hear the truth. I will say, I've been on this committee since 2005. In my second term on the committee, in the year that started 2007, then Chairman Dingell had a hearing on the amount of active pharmaceutical ingredient that we imported from other places, in particular China. Shortly after that, we had a problem with heparin contamination. We've had a number of hearings on this with lead-based toys, melamine in our pet food. And there's been a number of concerns about why we continue to use a supply chain when, from time to time, it's detrimental to us. So if there's any bright spot in this current crisis that we're in, it may be that finally, after 13 or 14 years, we seriously move to make stuff here, be our providers for ourselves, and quite frankly, you know, America first really should mean something. But I welcome you here today, Mr. Bowen. We're anxious to hear what you have to say.
I mean, made in America. Anyway, welcome, Mr. Bowen, and it is you have the floor now. You have 5 minutes for your testimony. If you want to place your statement in the record and just speak or read, it's up to you. But welcome, and thank you for joining us today. It's already afternoon. You need to turn your microphone on.
Good morning, Chairwoman SU and Ranking Member Burgess. Thank you for your invitation. It's my pleasure to testify. My name is Michael Bowen, and I am the Executive Vice President of Prestige Ameritech of North Richland Hills, Texas. And I have been in the medical industry since 1986 and with Prestige Ameritech since 2006. Prestige Ameritech was founded by President and CEO Dan Reese in 2005. I'm going to give a brief overview of my interactions with BARDA and its directors, but first I'll give you some pertinent mask industry history. Until 2004, 90% of all surgical masks worn, and I'm including surgical respirators, were domestically made. That year, or around that year, all of the major domestic mask sellers switched from selling domestically made masks to selling imported masks. Prestige Ameritech was founded in 2005, recognized this as a security issue in 2006. We thought that once America's hospitals learned that their mask supplies were subject to diversion by foreign governments during pandemics, they would switch back to US-made masks. We were wrong. In November of 2007, we received a phone call from BARDA asking for a tour of our mask factory. BARDA was acting on George W. Bush's Presidential Directive 21, the purpose of which was to review America's disaster plan. Brenda Hayden with BARDA gave a presentation which showed that BARDA was concerned about the foreign-controlled mask supply. We were thrilled that BARDA had discovered the issue until Brenda said that BARDA was only charged with studying the problem. We were disappointed, but we took consolation in the fact that finally a federal agency knew that the mask supply was in danger. We were very happy to have an ally. 2 years later, I received a call from Brenda Hayden. She started the conversation by saying, "We have a situation." Her serious tone caused me to ask her if she was talking about a pandemic, and she said yes. She asked if we could ramp up production, and I said yes. We built more machines, bought an abandoned Kimberly-Clark mask factory, tripled our workforce. America's hospitals needed us, and we rose to the occasion. We told them about the high cost of ramping up, and they said they would stay with us. Unfortunately, most returned to buying cheaper foreign-made masks when they became available. The company survived by laying off the 150 people who helped save the U.S. mask supply, by taking pay cuts, and by taking on more investors. The H1N1 pandemic, this is 2009, 2010, wasn't severe enough to cause the foreign health officials to cut off mask shipments to America. So our predictions didn't come true yet. In a weakened state but undaunted, Prestige Ameritech continued saying that the U.S. mask supply was headed for failure. We just didn't know when. In 2004, to give my security story more issue, I formed the Secure Mask Supply Association. You can find it at securemasksupply.org. Paraphrasing Ben Franklin, I told 3 competing domestic mask makers that if we didn't hang together, we would hang separately, as China was poised to put all of us out of business and put the country at even greater risk. Crosstex, Gerson, and Medicom, all with domestic mask-making factories, agreed and joined the SMSA. Unfortunately, the Secure Mask Supply Association's warnings were also unheeded. During my quest to secure the U.S. mask supply, I had the privilege of working with 3 BARDA directors, Dr. Robin Robinson, Dr. Richard Hatchett, and Dr. Rick Bright. They were helpful, and they encouraged me to continue warning people about the mask supply. I'll say a little bit more about that. After years of doing this, I quit many times, and the only reason I kept doing it is because of the directors of BARDA. They would encourage me and ask me not to quit. They said that they would express their concerns about the mask supply to anyone that I could get to call them, anyone except reporters. They weren't allowed to talk to reporters, which was very frustrating to me. They also weren't allowed to endorse the Secure Mask Supply Association. Dr. Robinson was going to do so until HHS attorneys told him that it could cost him his job. He called me personally on vacation to tell me that. I can confirm that the emails in Dr. Wright's complaint are mine. They are merely the latest of 13 years of emails I sent to BARDA in an effort to get HHS to understand that the U.S. mask supply was destined for failure. Robinson, Hatchett, and Bright all wanted to remedy the problem. In my opinion, they didn't have enough authority. Their hearts were in the right places. America was told after 9/11 that governmental silos had been torn down so that different federal agencies could work together for national securities. But I didn't see any of that. The DOD, the VA, the CDC, and HHS could have worked together to secure America's mask supply. I had suggested this to BARDA and to the CDC on several occasions. I will be happy to answer any questions that you have about Prestige Ameritech, the U.S. mask supply, or my interactions with BARDA, the CDC, or Rick Bright. And again, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowen, again for traveling across the country to be with us and for your testimony. We'll now move to member questions, and I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. You were already touched on your acknowledgement of your emails or description about your actions that were in Dr. Bright's complaint, so I'll move past that. To the best of your knowledge, is the section of Dr. Bright's complaint about the mask supply accurate?
Yes.
Should HHS and the administration have been able to foresee, in your view, the mask shortages caused by the pandemic?
Yes.
How many of your mask lines are not activated right now?
4.
4. My goodness. And as we have a run on supplies, you have 4 lines that could be working and manufacturing high-grade masks for those that need them in our country.
Yes, but not like turning on a light switch. It's a very large project.
And just spend a moment to tell us what it takes to bring those up.
Well, the machines were built.
If you were to receive orders now to activate those lines, explain that to us. And how many more masks could you be manufacturing right now?
We could be making about 7 million N95 respirators a month. However, again...
Did you say a month?
It's, yes, a month.
So say that again, the number of masks?
7 million N95 respirators per month. But again, it's not like turning on a switch. We didn't build these particular machines. They were from China, and we got them in an acquisition several years ago. So my email to Rick Bright, in that email I said, I think we're in trouble. We have these machines. It would be expensive and hard to get them going, but if this is going to be bad, that could happen. So that was my offer.
Very often, especially for lawyers in courtrooms and elsewhere, when you're going to ask a question, they say you should know the answer. I think I know the answer to this question, but I want to hear your view on it. We've allowed this supply, this very important supply of protective articles to other countries. Do you believe it's because of saving nickels, dimes, and quarters?
I call it chasing pennies to China. Mm-hmm. It's that insistence.
And look what it has cost us.
It's cost us lives.
And it cost us lives. It's cost us lives. If there's someone that would like me to yield the rest of my time, I'd be glad to. If not, we can go to the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Walden.
Well,
thank you, Mr. Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll let you reset the clock too. so I don't go over my allotted time here. And I appreciate your testimony, which I read last night. Toward the end of the last panel, I received a copy of an email that you sent to Dr. Bright on January 31st of this year. This email appears to be the one included in Dr. Bright's complaint, though it is one of the exhibits that was not publicly posted by the Washington Post, interestingly enough. Here's what the complaint says. 2 days later, Mr. Bowen of Prestige Ameritech sent yet another email to Dr. Bright and Dr. Wolf, once again issuing a dire warning about the imminent mass shortage. Among other things, he advised, and I quote, "This week we sent 1,000 masks to China and Hong Kong." Now, I believe your email actually says 1,000,000 masks to China and Hong Kong. He continued, quote, "In all my years of predicting the U.S. mask supply would one day collapse, I never pictured myself selling masks to China. I have it from 2 reliable sources. China's begun telling Chinese mask makers not to let masks leave China," close quote. He concluded, "I think China will cut off masks to the USA. If so, U.S. hospitals are going to have a very rough time, as up to half the supply is made in China. A horrible situation will become unbearable." That's
That is my email, yes, sir.
That's your email, okay. In the complaint, this is cited as an email from L. Wolf to R. Bright on January 29, 2020. I think that citation is obviously wrong, since even the complaint acknowledges that it's an email from you, Mr. Bowen, to Dr. Bright, right? That's your email.
That was my email. I don't know how it got to him. I mean, I don't know
how it got to.
Yeah, I don't know what emails chain you're looking at, but yes, sir, that was my email.
Well, I was reading from Mr. Bright's complaint, and I just received, I think, what appears to be a copy of this email. But I think it's cited wrong in the complaint. The email I received is dated January 31st, 2020. It includes all the language that I just read to you from the complaint, but, and this is exactly why the committee not only needs all the exhibits cited by Dr. Bright, not just the ones selectively obtained by the Washington Post, and needs the full email chains, not just the selective excerpts from Dr. Bright. Because this document also says, and I will quote, this is your email to Dr. Bright and to Laura Wolf. It says, and I quote, "My government strategy is to help the U.S. government if and only if the VA and DOD become my customers after this thing is over."
Yes, sir.
So, Madam Chair, I'd like to submit the email for the record. We'll send you an electronic copy as per our agreements here. Now, Mr. Cohen, Bowen, I'm sorry. You said you have, you want to help U.S. government, you want to help Americans get the masks. Yet it appears that there seems to be a condition here. I assume that's because in the past you ramped up, things went away, people bought from other manufacturers. And so here you're saying, and I have it here in the email, my strategy is to help my existing customers and only bring on new customers who are willing to sign a long-term contract. My government strategy is to help the U.S. government if and only if the VA and DOD become my customers after this thing is over. And here we were in a crisis as masks were going overseas. Now, the U.S. government's not your only purchaser, right?
U.S. government has never bought from me except during a pandemic, sir.
Okay,
and so that email and that statement was basically saying that I don't want the government to only call me in a pandemic.
Okay.
Give me business during peacetime so that I can survive to help you during a pandemic.
Did you ever ask for a sole source contract?
I have bid on the DOD and the VA business, and I continually lose to masks that are made in Mexico because the DOD does not obey the Berry Amendment. They buy foreign masks made in Mexico because Mexico is a friend of ours and is called a TAA compliant country.
Were your masks not NIOSH 95
make the decision approved? Based on price.
How long,
national security.
Sir, if I could reclaim my time. How long, you said you couldn't turn on these lines of manufacturing very quickly. How long, if you got a big order from the government today, would it take you to produce masks?
3 or 4 months, and the government wants to do that right now. HHS is asking me to do that.
And it will take you 3 to 4 months?
Yes, I told them it's going to take 3 or 4 months. They only want masks to the end of the year, so I would have to hire 100 people, train 100 people, and then fire them at the end of the program. I'm not going to do that. Again, I don't want the government to only deal with me when
time's expired, Madam Chair. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. It's a pleasure.
There. In your written testimony, you note that in 2004, major domestic surgical mask sellers switched from making surgical masks domestically to importing them. I know you spoke a little bit about it, but could you go into more detail and explain what prompted this change?
Mask companies wanting to make more profit. So they go to countries, well, it's not just mask companies, it's people who are in the hospital industry who are competing for contracts, for supplies. And it's a bid type situation most of the time. And the way you make products cheaply is to make them in China and Mexico and other places. So that's why the U.S. mask supply left. It wasn't a coordinated effort. It was a bunch of companies coincidentally deciding to save money at the same time and destroying maybe 4,000 jobs in America and putting the U.S. mask supply under foreign control. And that's been my message since 2006, actually.
Well, it's really unbelievable because it isn't just foreign control. It's a very large degree to China control. When we look at, again, I'm chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, when we look at the geopolitical parts of the world, China is probably the biggest adversary to the United States. So not only are we leaving it in their hands, we're leaving it in the hands of an adversary. And we're sort of beholden to that country. And I cannot think of much that's more dangerous than that. So I'm sure you agree.
China controls most of the world's mask supply. China can sell a box of masks for $1 a box. Or let me say this, China sells $1 a box of masks for $1. I don't think anybody's making any profit doing that because I sell them for about $5. So their prices are so cheap that they've captured most of the world's mass market.
Does their government subsidize the Chinese government, the Beijing government?
I don't know that. I don't know. All I know is their masks cost less than the materials. If I take my labor costs totally out, I'm still nowhere near the cost of their products.
Do the Chinese masks meet our standards?
Some do, some don't.
What steps can the federal government take to incentivize more medical manufacturing of critical equipment like surgical face masks in the United States?
Well, as in a letter that I sent to President Obama, I don't think it requires money. I think it requires the government saying it is a national security problem. It requires the CDC telling America's hospitals they are too dependent on foreign-made masks and put them in legal liability. They have to protect their patients and staff. If in a public forum like this, you say this is a national security issue, then those hospitals' attorneys are probably going to get on the ball and tell their hospitals to buy American-made products. And they don't cost that much. The whole market is only a couple of $100 million. This whole problem, this is a $30 million problem, folks. This is for people trying to save pennies across the whole United States. It's not some multi-billion-dollar problem.
Would you repeat that again and lean forward into that microphone so that everybody hears it again?
I said this is a $30 million problem. It's not billions and billions of dollars. I've never asked for money. In a letter to President Obama, and I wrote President Trump as well, but in a letter to President Obama, I said that this isn't about money. This is about information. Tell America's hospitals that they are going to be in a position to not be able to protect their staff and their patients. And their attorneys, those hospital attorneys, will tell their hospital to buy American-made masks. I don't need your money. Don't need subsidies. Just tell people about the problem. And that was my problem with BARDA. Not my problem. BARDA wanted to do it. They weren't allowed to do it. this issue needed publicity. I tried to get him to talk to the Infection Control Prevention magazine, Infection Control Today, sorry. I wanted them to talk to the New York Times. Every time we had some kind of a flu bump, I wanted them to be able to talk, and they couldn't do it.
Well, thank you very much. Your testimony has certainly been very enlightening. I know the chairwoman and I were kind of looking at each other in almost in disbelief, and I certainly think that this is something that Congress has to get involved with, and sooner the better. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Can I point out something?
Sure.
You know, I watched all of this in a room a little while ago, and it seemed like everybody who was beating up on Mr. Bright, Dr. Bright, was a Republican, and everybody who was defending him was a Democrat. I'm a Republican. I voted for President Trump, and I admire Dr. Bright. I don't know what he did in all of his other activities, but I think everything I've heard and every time I've talked to him and everything he said here made a lot of sense, and I believe him.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen.
Manufacture process, and so
If you can.
so my questions are, what type of masks do you manufacture, and do they represent the totality of mass variations sought by the Strategic National Stockpile? And if you can get all these questions in, do you make all masks that are in demand that other domestic product producers make?
The only mask that I don't make is a cone style mask, the hard cone style. All the masks like you all are wearing, we make all of those, and we make N95 respirators, yes.
You do all the N95?
Our factory used to make 87% of the U.S. mask supply.
So as you know, the Strategic National Stockpile procedure procures medical countermeasures and other supplies to be deployed in a public health agency.
Yes, sir.
I understand you worked with Dr. Bright at BARDA to get federal funding to produce masks. Did you have any conversations with Stephen Adams, the acting director of the Strategic National Stockpile?
Let me go back before that. In the Strategic National Stockpile, I met with Greg Burrell face-to-face 5 or 6 years ago. And Greg Burrell had no problem whatsoever buying Chinese masks. And I had a conversation with him in the hallway after a meeting when I said, don't you find this a problem that America is dependent on Chinese masks? And he said, no, I don't. And as far as Mr. Adams, I believe I may have emailed him. I don't know, sir. The last 100 days, I've talked to so many people. I don't know what day it is most of the time.
So you thought it was necessary to go through Dr. Bright? You couldn't get anybody else to listen to than Dr. Bright?
Well, no. You got it all wrong. First of all, I wasn't looking for...
I'm wrong. I'm just trying to find the information.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I wasn't looking for business. I opened my email. I don't need your business. My phones are ringing off the wall. I thought of BARDA, Dr. Robinson, Dr. Hatchett, and Dr. Bright. I thought of them as brothers in arms. I knew they couldn't buy my products. I knew that. But they were the only people who believed it. I would like everybody to go to YouTube, put in Michael Burgess and Prestige Ameritech. You'll see Mr. Burgess talking at our factory 10 years ago. You'll see him say that only 10% of the mask supply is made in the United States. I talked to Michael Burgess, Ron Wright, Joe Barton, Patrick Leahy. My associate Matt Conlon talked to Chuck Schumer. I wrote Barack Obama 20 letters. Wrote President Trump and everybody in his early administration. Defense Secretary Mattis, General Jeffrey Clark, Nicole Lurie, Anita Patel with CDC, National Academies of Science, Greg Burrell, hundreds of hospitals, hospital purchasing groups, the Hospital Risk Managers Association. Hospital Risk Managers Association told them the mask supply was going to collapse. This is a risk. Nobody listened. Association of Operating Room Nurses, the Defense Department, the Veterans Department, Texas Governor Rick Perry, State Texas Rep Bill Zedler. By the way, Bill Zedler got it. Dozens of reporters. I've been on every news show. I've done this for 13 years. Nobody listened. And my conscience is clean, Mr. Guthrie. I've been working on this damn issue for 13 years, trying to save lives. Nobody listened, and now I'm not going to take any of this. What you're trying to do.
I'm not sure what I'm trying to do. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find out about who you talked with to move forward. So, well, the issue is that we do have to figure out what's strategic and where to move forward, and there is a lot of stuff, not just masks, a lot of stuff come from China, a lot of our pharmaceuticals and stuff moving forward, and that's something this committee needs to dig in to move forward and figure out what's moving forward, but I'm not sure what you're accusing me of trying to do, but I'll yell back. I apologize if I offended you. I didn't intend to.
The gentleman yields back. I think my colleagues will agree that my description of Mr. Bowen is that he's a force of nature. I mean, he has refused to give up since what year? 2006? You began your crusade?
2006.
2006. It's a pleasure to recognize the gentlewoman from California.
Procuring medical equipment and protective gear in the most efficient and transparent way possible. Now, we are preparing for a second wave of COVID-19 outbreaks that could coincide with the fall flu season. Mr. Bowen, from your perspective, and you've had experience in this, what gaps remain in the mass supply chain, and where should we be focusing our efforts now to ensure we're prepared to protect public health for the remainder of 2020?
Well, this is an unprecedented situation. There's no way anybody could have made enough masks to protect all of Americans' citizens. But we could have done a lot better we could have protected America's healthcare workers and patients. And that's where my world is. That's the products that we make, and that's what we've tried to do. And in this pandemic, for instance, we were making 75,000 respirators a month. That's not a lot, but we've been making them 10 years. We just couldn't get business because our products are made in America and they're more expensive. Now we're making 2 million, from 75,000 to 2 million. We're bringing on another 2 million, and these are machines that we've built. So, you know, it's easy to look. I've seen a lot of people, kind of like what he was saying. Hey, you got 4 machines. What's up? Why are you not running those machines? We are not sitting on our hands, folks. We've gone from 1 shift to 3. We've gone from 80 people to 200. We're working our tail off and producing millions and millions of products. Setting those machines up is going to be difficult and expensive, and it requires a long-term commitment from a partner, not somebody who can just say, hey, do this. Because look, we're a small business. And again, I'm not 3M. And if we do this, my partner and I euphemistically call it a suicide mission. Yeah, okay, let's go. Let's hire 100 people and, you know, order truckloads of material, and then somebody says pandemic's over and we're stuck with it again. We don't want to do that. So we're not mercenary. Like I said, my conscience couldn't be any cleaner. You know, I've been telling this message forever. So for somebody to say you could have done better, I'm offended by that.
No, I'm not saying that at all. So thank you very much, Ms. Bowen, for coming before us, and you brought a lot of things to our attention that I think are necessary. So thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. My pleasure to be here.
The gentlewoman yields.
Offer to several agencies.
I see my time's up. I yield back, Madam Chair.
And by the way, forgive me for being angry. I'm angry because I've done this for so long. And I've been ignored for so long. And I apologize.
Well, Mr. Bowen, I don't think you need to apologize. At least that's my view. I think shame on us. I think shame on all of us that we've allowed this to happen. And this is powerful testimony. It underscores what we need to do, the position that we're in, our crippling dependence on foreign countries for what is, we all realize now with this pandemic, what has been laid bare.
I totally...
And so your testimony is, I think, some of the most important testimony that Congress could be hearing. I now have the pleasure of recognizing the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Castor, for her 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Bowen, for testifying. or you're presenting today. Considering the Made in China 2025 initiative, can you describe how China is working to corner the personal protective equipment, the PPE market? If you can't, I understand, but well, if you can, it would be very informative.
America has a weakness for low prices, and I think Chinese prices are so low. A few years ago, I decided to go buy 12 things from Lowe's Home Improvement Center, and I decided I was going to pay whatever it took to buy American. I couldn't make that decision. That decision was taken away from me. I bought one item. It was a plunger. A toilet plunger was the only thing I could find that was made in America. And it's what it is. It's the people like the Lowe's and the Home Depot and the Walmarts and the medical companies that the way they want to make money is to lower their costs. The way they lower their costs is to go to China. The line is long and wide for people going to China. And that's why we're dependent on them for everything. I mean, go and look at your closet. Look at your tools. Look at everything. It's all from China. And the stuff that's in Mexico, let me say this, half of the U.S. mask supply is in Mexico. It's got reservations to go to China. Mexico's not cheap enough. And hospitals are cash strapped and they're bidding out things. If this hadn't happened, Mexico would have lost the business, and they'd have gone, China would have, in 5 years, China would have made all masks and respirators. Like they do the gowns.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bowen. You don't know me, but I feel like I know you because when I listen to you talk, I think about a lot of people in my district, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, who scratch their head a lot of the time and wonder why we can't get these things fixed, why we can't do simple stuff, why we can't get from point A to point B. And I would say to you that I think your composure today has been remarkable given the fight you've been waging for 15 years. In ancient mythology, there's a character called Cassandra. Cassandra had the ability to see into the future, but was cursed by Apollo that no one would ever believe her prophecy. And sitting here listening to you today, that's immediately what I thought of. And so thank you for maintaining composure at a time when you could literally, without apology, stand on that desk and just scream at the top of your lungs, "I told you so," over and over and over and over again. This is a report from 2007. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, discussion with respirator protection device manufacturers on preparedness and surge capacity. First page is the bottom line. I'm just going to read some of these things. 2007. There will be a significant increase in the need for respiratory protection devices, RPD, during an influenza pandemic. There will be significant needs across all sectors: healthcare, public safety, business, government, public. Industrial surge capacity of RPD will not be able to meet need, and supplies will be short during a pandemic. There are several RPD options. I'm sure you probably described some of them that can be employed to meet the projected needs. All sectors must contribute to efforts to prepare in order to meet the needs for RPD or find safe ways to work around limited supplies during a pandemic. So this is 2007. This is when you were starting on your crusade. Well-founded, obviously, given what the department was identifying as needs at that time. And here we are, 13 years later, in the midst of a pandemic that you and others cautioned us about, and we're not ready. And I have to say that I'm embarrassed on behalf of the government's failure to respond to these warnings for so many years. I actually was elected in 2006 and came here in 2007. So my time here kind of tracks your journey to try to get us to wake up to this pandemic, to get things to be made again here in America. And I've been an advocate for those things, but not enough of an advocate, I confess, given what you're saying. So I apologize on behalf of the U.S. government that we have not responded better to the warnings that you've given us for so many years. And now we're paying for it. And the cost is lives, unfortunately. So shame on us. And you know, 10 years from now, they'll play back the video of this hearing, and will we mark this as the beginning of...
We're going to have to leave this to fulfill our 41-year commitment to live U.S. House coverage. Continue watching live coverage on cspan.org. Now to the House.
Here's the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Lujan, for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Bowen, thank you so much for being with us today, sir. As you outlined in your testimony, you have been raising the alarm about the national security risk from the loss of domestic mass production for some time. Does the United States need to change that and dramatically increase the manufacturing of medical supplies?
There's a short-term issue and a long-term issue. Right now, there's a lot of masks that are needed, and there are a lot of people going into the business. Unfortunately, a lot of them don't know what they're doing, and we're making masks out of fabric and other things that don't work. What I call it is making a life jacket out of lead. You know, I can make a life jacket out of lead and I can paint it orange, but don't go in the pool. Some of these masks that are being made are worthless. I'm sorry, I lost it.
I think you answered the question that yes, the United States needs to take this seriously and to up manufacturing, but we need to do it the right way.
Yeah, I don't think we need to up manufacturing that much. I just think we need to have it be in the United States so it can't get cut off. Like a lot of the Chinese supply was cut off.
Appreciate that, sir. On January 22nd, you emailed officials at HHS and offered to reactivate 4 of your company's unused production lines for N95 respirators, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what was the response to your offer?
Well, Dr. Bright was kind of all over it. I mean, he really thought this was an important thing. So he said, I'm going to forward you to Laura Wolf. She's in charge of infrastructure. And my attitude was, this is too little too late, but we've got these 4 machines. We could at least, you know, protect some people, maybe our infrastructure. So they asked me to get with her and tell her what we could do. So I did. I sent a big long email that said, here's what we can do. And then there wasn't a lot of response after that. And again, I wasn't looking for a contract. I'm just trying to be helpful at this point. So, and again, I think that the travesty here isn't what happened in January and that time. Laura Wolf is no more responsible than all these other thousands of people that I told, hospitals and everybody I told. So to look at her and go, or look at them and go, hey, they didn't listen and you were right, well, it might not have been right. They're all making decisions in a battlefield situation. I'm not going to be too hard on those folks. I think that the real issue is that, I mean, look at the HHS presentation from 13 years ago. They said, here it is, we're going to have a problem. And that day, that's why I said when Brenda Hayden came and gave us that presentation, Brenda, you're preaching to the choir. We can't believe this. This is so wonderful. And then Brenda goes, but we're not allowed to fix it. I said, you got to be kidding. So that's why I latched on to BARDA, because they were the only people who believed it. And I kept thinking, and I'll tell you how bad it was, and how the responsibility of this goes far and wide, is all 3 of those directors believed it and knew that it was going to happen, and they tried to work with me. Dr. Robinson got on a plane and went and talked to a hospital group in Houston because I asked him to. And because of that, MD Anderson Cancer Center today has enough masks, and they're the only hospital system in Texas, in Houston who does, because Dr. Robinson got on a plane.
Just because my time's going to run out here, sir, in that communication, it's my understanding that you shared how many masks you could make, and what I was led to believe was 1.7 million masks per week or 7 million per month. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct. If we ran 24/7, yes.
And the price you offered was 79 cents, I think I heard you say earlier?
Well, back then, there was no talk of price. I just said these machines are available. And again, I wasn't looking for a contract. I just said, this is here. Remember this? This is here. Don't forget it.
Earlier in the testimony, though, I think you said the price was 79 cents for some other...
Since then, we have priced them at 79 cents. Yes,
I appreciate that, sir. And when the government finally acted on the need for masks and entered into contracts with less experienced manufacturers, they ended up paying as much as $5.50 per mask. Is that correct?
I just know what I read in the paper.
I read that as well. It sounds like price gouging to me. Look, Dr. Bright testified that there's still a shortage of PPE. There should be no question to everyone in this hearing that there's a shortage of PPE, including masks. Now, instead of the Trump administration accepting responsibility and ensuring critical PPE is manufactured at the level needed and coordinating with states to distribute PPE where it's needed, the administration left states bidding against one another. Jared Kushner, who was appointed by the president to be in charge of medical supplies, said at a press conference, quote, "The notion of the federal stockpile was it's supposed to be our stockpile, it's not supposed to be the state stockpiles that they then use." A day after Jared Kushner was on that press conference, the website was changed to reflect his remarks. Madam Chair, I just want to submit into the record an article from U.S. News and World Report, States Competing in Global Jungle for PPE.
So ordered.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Kneel back. The gentleman kneel.
And for the national stockpile, I mean, it seems to me that we're going to have to really consider changing how we deal with that. I mean, you know, you have a stockpile of something, you buy all of this stuff, and then it outdates, right? And then you buy it all again. Right. So what's the outdate on a, say just an N95 mask, how long are those certified to be used and sitting on a shelf, you pull it off there?
They're all different.
For how long?
They're all different. 5, 10, 15 years, they're all
different. They're
all different, but I've never thought that stockpiling was the way to go.
Right, so this mask here might be, you know, if it's set on a shelf in a closed box, it might say on there 10 years.
It might be fine.
Or it might be fine. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so, or the elastic could rot. And
which has happened, by the way. I've had people at hospitals tell me they've pulled masks off the shelf and the elastics popped when they try to put it on.
I don't think stockpiling is
so what do you think we should do then? I mean, should we, well, for example, in the stockpile, if they were outdated, start to outdate, should we be able to sell that stuff before it outdates? I mean, what would be the length of time before an outdate that you'd feel comfortable selling a product?
I don't believe in stockpiling, sir, because of all the problems that we've already identified.
Okay.
I think what we should do is come up with a new kind of mask that can be made extremely fast. Talking about hundreds of millions of weeks.
So some innovative stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
And then ramp up. I presented a program or an idea called HyperSurge to CDC several years ago, and that's what I said. And they said it was the best presentation of the meeting. Yeah. And then we never did it because I couldn't figure out a way to make it profitable to go and build a machine that's not going to be used. I'm not in that business.
Yeah, so I get that because like I was a heart surgeon before, and so we used to, when I first started 25 years ago, we would have a stockpile of heart valves of all sizes.
Right.
The hospital bought them, they sat there, they had outdates on them, and over the years, ultimately, we got to a point where they don't stockpile those anymore at the hospital because things would outdate and they'd have to get rid of them. So now, basically, things rotate. You know, when you're going to do a heart surgery case,
right?
You know, you can get the products will come through and, and you'll be it's consignment basically, right?